Hi, and thank you for watching us here at Tax Talk UK, where we talk about all things tax and try to help you to navigate the tax system as it applies to you. Today, as part of our bite-sized demo series, helping you to understand how to complete a self-assessment tax return, we're going to look at the employment pages. Before I do, if I could please ask, if you're new here, please do take a moment to subscribe to our YouTube channel. That way you will easily be able to navigate back to this information if you should need to, as well as being able to access all the other information that we have on a whole host of different topics, all aimed at helping you to navigate the tax system as it applies to you. In regards to our bite-sized demo series, helping you to understand how to complete the self-assessment tax return. If you navigate to the playlist section of our YouTube channel, you will find the full bite-sized video series neatly organised within a playlist for you. So back then to completing the employment section of your self-assessment tax return. So you will remember when you complete the tailor your return sections at the start of the online tax return, if you select yes to having an income, then you will be presented with the correct pages that you need. And if you select no, then you won't be presented with those pages. So if you do have employment income to complete and you don't see those pages, then just check in the tailor your return section that you have selected yes. When you select yes to having employment income, you will be asked how many sources. So if you have more than one employers or you've had more than one employer throughout the tax year, you will need to enter the correct number. And in that tailor your return, you will be asked for the employer's name and you will need to list if you've had more than one. So we're talking about PAYE income through your employer, and you will have been provided with a P60 at the end of the tax year or a P45 if you've left during the tax year. Another thing that's important to mention is you will need your P60s if you've got more than one, and P45, any of those that are applicable, one for each employer, to hand when you come to actually complete the employment section. And it's important to note, so if you just had one employer, that's quite straightforward on your P60. Say, for example, if you change jobs throughout the year and you perhaps may have a P45 from your previous employer and your new employer a P60, it's important to understand on the P60 there will be a section from this employment and from previous employment. So if the section from previous employment is the same as the P45, then you can see if you enter the total and you enter the P45 income, then you will be duplicating that income. So for that purpose, it's important from the P60 that you're putting from this employment figures, that you're using those figures, and that for the previous income that you've got the relevant piece of paper, P45, from that employer, and that you list them separately. If you don't have a P60 or a P45, if you have a personal tax account on the gateway, you can log in and you should be able to find the information in there, and because that would have been submitted by the employer to HMRC. Or otherwise you can ask for a duplicate. It's important also to mention that even if you have been taxed correctly on that income, it's still important for it to be included. If you need to complete a self-assessment tax return, you must put that income on along with the tax that's been deducted. But your self-assessment tax return isn't just for telling HMRC about income that needs to be taxed. It's actually about telling HMRC a full picture of your income throughout the tax year in order that your total income can be calculated, your correct liability, and then what will be assessed also against that liability is any tax that has already been collected. So you won't be taxed twice on it by including it, but it is important to include it and also accurately include it along with the tax that's been deducted. And as I say, you will have that from having the P60 or the P45 to hand. If you don't have that and you have worked from information in your personal tax account, then it may be advisable just to put a note in the notes section that this is what you've done, just in case that there is any sort of discrepancy, that HMRC know that you haven't actually been provided with a P60 or a P45, and this is where you've obtained the information. So let's have a look then at the actual page. Okay, so here we are on the employment page. So this is the page that you will be presented with if you have put that you have employment income on the tailor your return. So you'll see here that the employer name is already completed, and that is pulled from when you completed the tailor your return, and it asked you how many employers that you had. And for each, if you said one, it will give you one box. If you said two, it give you two boxes. You say how many employers, and then you put the name. So this is just for the purposes that if you've got more than one employer, you know you're completing the right information for the right employer and tallying them up correctly. So the employer's PAYE reference number, so that will be on your P60 or on your P45. Or if you have obtained the information from your personal tax account, it should be available on there. If you don't know it for some reason and you're not able to get that from your employer, if you maybe just put a note in the note section to say why you don't have that. Just so that HMRC know why you haven't worked from a P60 or a P45, and then you will put the total pay. So again, you're just copying the information from the P60 or the P45, the total pay. And again, if you have more than one employer through the year and you've changed jobs and your P60 has a from previous employment and from this employment, just make sure that you're only completing this employment figure there, and the tax that's been deducted per your P60 or per your P45. If you've had any tips and other payments, so again, like all of the sections of your self-assessment return, if you're not sure what a question means, and whether it's relevant, if you drop down, it will tell you. So you would include that if it's relevant. Were you a director of this company? So this is going to be relevant for our audience that are self-employed, trading as micro-entity companies, and receiving some PAYE salaried pay. You would tick yes if you were a director of the company, and if the company is a closed company, and if you're not sure, you can to remind yourself. So a closed company, generally speaking, is if it has 5 or more participators, which are shareholders in the company, it would be deemed to be a closed company. So you just answer those questions accordingly. And is the employment income from inside off payroll working engagement? So this generally relates to IR35, and you would most likely know if that was the case. It is a very complex subject, so we're not going to cover that here. Have you received any taxable benefits and expenses from the company? From your employer? So taxable benefits, you may have received a company car, for example, medical insurance, and you may have received, or in that case, you should have received a P11D at the end of the tax year, and you will need that piece of paper to be able to have the information to put on the return. Just to mention that if your taxable benefits have been payrolled, they will be included on your P60. So generally you would know this if you've had taxable benefits and you're not sure. If you ask your employer for your P11D, if they've been payrolled, they will tell you this. So if you have received them, you will select yes, and much like the tailoring the return, if you have received them, it will present the pages that you need to copy that information from your P11D. As I say, if they have been payrolled, they will be included on your P60, so you don't need to duplicate them here. Your employer will have told HMRC that they're payrolling them, so they will have gone through and be included in the main figures. Do you wish to claim any employment expenses or capital allowances? So again, these are job expenses, these are expenses, these are things that you've paid for the benefit of your employer, but your employer hasn't reimbursed you. Perhaps you might have had to pay a professional subscription, or you may have incurred mileage, and you would put yes, and then again it will give you the boxes that you will need to be able to give that information. It doesn't matter if the information's not correct on your tax code notice. You would put the correct information here. So say, for example, if in the previous year HMRC may have presumed the expenses were going to be the same and included them in your tax code, if that is correct and it hasn't been corrected, you still should be putting the correct figure here. So hopefully that helps you a basic understanding of how to complete the employment page of your self-assessment tax return to ensure that your tax return is accurate and the information is correct. As we often say, when you get to the end of your self-assessment tax return, just take the time to actually look at the calculation, not just the actual tax part of it, but the top section, which shows a list of the total income. This can just be a double check to make sure that you haven't duplicated any income or missed any income off of your self-assessment tax return. And as I mentioned, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to the channel. And thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.